Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Think and grow rich. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again with Salt Strong Unchurched. One of my favorite books of all time is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I've read it, I don't know how many times. I literally read it every single year and probably have since I was 30. So not to date myself, but at least over 15 times I've read this book. I try to read it at the beginning of every single year. Usually in the first quarter, I just finished rereading it, which is why I'm doing this podcast. Just a great reminder of how powerful this book is. But it kind of gets me jump started for the year. I try to read it, closer to New Year's, even around Christmas sometimes, to kind of, just get my mind thinking. And it's not about making money. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about money if you've read the book. But the word rich is really about just success. It's about what you desire in life. And it's amazing the stories are in there. One of the main stories is just about how this group of men, created a nation called America, right? All because of an idea about freedom, right? They risked their life for the gallows, as the story goes. They essentially signed their name to something that was treason. And if they didn't win, they were literally going to be killed, if not killed, in war. And that was one of those where it started with an idea, right? So this book, if you will, is all about every big thing, big or small, really starts with an idea. That's the seed, if you will. And how you water that seed is with a burning desire to make it happen. For instance, if Samuel Adams and these group of men had just said, oh, yeah, you know what, it kind of stinks that we have troops all in our streets and they're treating us bad, and we feel like we've got no freedom or no control. And they just kind of wrote it off and moved on along their lives, like most of us do with most of our big ideas, right? And never would have happened. We wouldn't be United States of America right now. But instead, they had the idea that, hey, we're tired of this. We're fed up with this. Let's do something about it. And they took massive action with a burning desire to make it happen, to say, you know what, we're not going to give up no matter what. And as you can probably imagine, if you haven't read this book, the word persistence comes up over and over and over again. The word desire, I wish I had all the stats in front of me about how many times the word desire. Desire is like this burning, unwavering, it's a desire for a specific goal. And that really is kind of the starting point of all achievement. Riches, success, just getting something done, right? Finding your mate. It could be something you're pursuing, a job you're pursuing. It could be something for your kids. But every single thing starts with that idea. And then there's this desire, this kind of something that like a fire lit underneath you that you're not going to let go. And then, which is why this ties in a lot to Unchurched, the word faith comes up over and over and over again. And faith can mean, different things to different people, but in general, and not just faith in God, but faith in yourself. It's an unwavering belief, right? Is really what it is. Faith is an unwavering belief, something that you're not going to let go of. And you have to have faith that you are going to achieve this goal. And what usually gets in the way is the fear of either failure or the fear of criticism. I'll be honest, I had a lot of that when Luke and I decided to leave our and it wasn't just six-figure, it was multiple six-figure jobs. The old story that two brothers quit their six-figure jobs. It was multiple six figures. It was a lot of money. It wasn't like we were just making 100 on the dot. And once again, it's not about money, but it was a big deal. It wasn't like we were just leaving jobs that we hated and weren't making money. It was something that was very, very impactful. We had a um, really good means of income and a really good way of life in general. And it was a big, big deal. I remember my boss. I mean, I remember when I told him. I remember where I was sitting. I remember the entire. I remember the entire experience and the whole episode. I can just play it in my head because it was such a big deal. I'd rehearsed it. I'm literally going to quit my job and walk away from all this stuff to pursue a fishing company with no real business plan. And I remember him looking at me and he kind of smiled. He's an entrepreneur. And at first he was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And even then I started doubting myself. And he's like, "Well, tell me more, like, how are you going to turn this into a business?" And I'm like, I don't know, but I feel like I've just called to do this. And that would have been my opportunity right there to say, you know what? Yeah, maybe we should give a little bit more time, right? Yeah, maybe I shouldn't do this if so and so thinks I'm crazy. And certainly, my parents have always been supportive, and I was newly married at the time, and my wife was very supportive. Still, a little bit of fear in the back of her head, and I'm sure my parents were still thinking the same thing. Like, man, we believe in Joe and Luke, but man, this is kind of crazy. No one's really ever done this before. Are they gonna, they're gonna fail in their first year on their faces and look like idiots? Have to go back begging for their old jobs again? Who knows? So, all that being said, I feel like that fear of criticism and failure, those two, and there's a few others I'll talk about here in a second, but those two in particular, at least for me, I felt those big time. It was that fear of, hey, what are people going to think about me? And the other one was just that fear of the failure. Like, man, what if this does fail? And I've had quite a few people have reached out to me over the years that have a dream, the idea, if you will, right? This Think and Grow Rich, this idea. They have a desire, like they really do have this like burning, like unwavering desire, but they don't really have the full faith yet. Because if you have the faith, you're just going to do it, right? Like blind faith means you're just, all right, cool, I'm doing it, I'm going to jump in. And as I dig down, I'm like, all right, what's holding you back? What are you most fearful about? And the majority of them aren't fearful about the criticism about others. They've moved past that, which is great. The fear is usually just about that failure. That, man, what if I lose everything in this? What if it doesn't work? And my response always back to them is, all right, let's walk through that. So let's just say you quit your job and you all of this passion, this pursuit, something you truly feel like God is leading you to do, something that you just can't get out of your mind. You've thought it out enough where it really can be a business, right? I do encourage everyone to at least get a little bit of advice, right? Do a little bit of research, make sure there's a market for what you have. Like, I knew there was people hungry for fishing education because it wasn't out there. It was, basically fishing magazines and TV shows, and no one was really teaching like real-time trends, like showing spots and doing the things that we've been doing. So I knew there was a market for that. I knew there's a lot of fishermen, right? There's 50 million people went fishing last year. So I knew there was a market for it. Make sure there's a market for it. But then two, on terms of going back to the worst case scenario, I keep walking them through it. I was like, all right, assuming you have a good plan, and let's just say it does fail. Let's just say you work at it for a year. Usually that first year or two is the toughest. That's usually when businesses fail. They usually don't fail like in year 10, right? It's usually in those first couple of years and they just can't get off the ground. So let's just say it does fail. What happens next? And I don't think most people think through that. I know I didn't. And until I did, that's when it made it just a no-brainer. But what happens next? And usually like, well, I don't know. I guess I have to go back to my old job. And I was like, and you think they'd take you? Like, well, yeah, of course. I was like their top salesperson. I was one of their top employees, their top operations people. I was like, okay. So, and honestly, in my opinion, is a owner of a business and someone who's always looking for great people, I would gladly take someone who has had a job, quit a job, gone out and tried something on their own and even failed, because when you fail, you learn so much more than you ever could in a normal job. I'd rather take that person than someone who's only just worked a job and never tried something on their own. And I think when I tell someone that who's struggling with, hey, should I pursue this job or this dream or whatever it might be, it puts them at ease. Like, well, yeah, that does make sense, right? So let me rehash what I just said. So worst case scenario, it does fail, right? You learned more than you ever would have on the job, right? Working for someone else, meaning you have a lot of real world experience now you can go apply somewhere else, assuming you were already pretty great at what you did before. Or you've probably met new people even in this industry that you started, if it was a new industry. You were going to have the easiest time in the world landing a new job, probably at more pay than what you were making before. So if that's the worst case scenario, how bad could it be? And that was the filter that I was putting through with me. I knew my boss, I was very valuable to that company, made them many, many millions of dollars. And I knew they would take me back in a second. And actually, ironically, they tried to recruit me back while I was doing the first couple of years of Salt Strong. And I thought about it for a little while because it was taking so long to get off the ground. We weren't really making any money and it was super, super stressful. I'm very glad I didn't. But my point is, it's usually never as scary as you think it is in terms of that fear of failure. Assuming you go in knowing that you're going to learn something, you're going to have an amazing experience. You're going to meet people. You're going to learn more about yourself than ever before. Really, really, it's exciting, honestly. So I encourage everyone to do it with very, very big caveat here, with the knowing the fact that you've got some advice, you've maybe had some advisors. The Bible talks about that constantly. Get advisors for any big decisions you're making. Run it by other people, and not just like your relatives. My relatives would have thought I was crazy. Like, well, this doesn't make any sense. But run it by people in the industry, right? Run it by people who you trust, who have started a business, right? Don't go to the person, your wild aunt or uncle who's never run a business, who's just worked their whole life. No offense to that, but meaning if you're about to start something new, go to someone who has started something new and has actually had success, right? I could give a whole lot better feedback because I've done it now multiple times in two different industries, starting a business and seeing it grow and succeed. You learn so much more than being an employee. There's nothing wrong or right about either of them. There's certainly pros and cons to both. There are many, many days I wish I was an employee and didn't have to worry about all the stress and things that came with being an owner of a company. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get back into the book. I think the most powerful thing for me, that like the reminder I get every single time, is that most ideas, most big ideas, most successful people in the world, the people who are following their dreams, they have this ability to come up with ideas first and foremost, have that burning desire, then back them by faith and then persistence, right? Because I think a lot of people can come up with the idea, they can have this desire and get really, really excited about it, like burning hot excited by it. They can have some faith, but they're not really persistent with it. And persistence means you talk about it every day. And this book talks about, all right, what is your goal? And this goal could be anything, guys. Don't think this is all about just someone trying to start a business or do something like that, or even make money for that matter. This could be a dream you've always wanted to do, to travel the world or go on a cruise around the world, or if you're a widow right now, to find your next spouse or your next person you're going to spend the next 15, 10, whatever years with. This could be anything that you were passionate about and that you're excited about and that you kind of feel in your heart and your soul that you're supposed to pursue, right? This doesn't mean it has to be a job. And when you have that, that's the idea, right? And it talks about whatever it is, write it down and pray about it, right? Have this faith and this prayer about it every single day. So I've got something, I'm not going to share it right now. Hopefully I can share it in the somewhat near future. there's something big that I'm trying to do, and it ties around the theme park that you've heard me mention many times. And I'm literally looking at it. So I've written it down. It's a very specific goal, and I've written it down. And I look at it and I read it out loud. So it's written down on a piece of paper, and I look at it and I read it every single morning and every single night, at least twice a day. Sometimes during the day, I'll just at least think about it. I'm praying about it constantly. And this book talks about how so many different ideas like that, when they're they got the power of the desire and backed by faith and persistence, how they can actually just come alive. And I know that sounds goofy if you've never been through that or never really studied the subconscious mind. I have had so many of those things happen in my life. It's not even funny, where I have dreamed about something, from my meeting my wife to the first job when I quit my very first job to leave, and then the one I just told you about when I did Saltron was the second time I quit a job, a multi six-figure job, to start something new. Every single one of those was backed by some idea and something I was thinking about and looking at and praying about multiple times per day. And that's that persistence part, that action part of it. So powerful. And the other one is making decisions pretty quickly, right? This is the what a lot of people would call their the hunch, right? Or just, I went with my gut. I followed my gut. Have you ever heard that? That means you make a decision quickly. Like, and if you look at any of the biggest names out there, I'm talking about the Steve Jobs and Bezos, the guys who have created these billion, trillion-dollar companies, Zuckerberg, all of them say that's a trait that they have. They make decisions quickly just on their gut, right? Like Steve Jobs was famous for, he's like, why are we paying people to go through, like, essentially, to get a consulting group and spend a year finding out what people like? He's like, no, I know this is right. We're going with it. Basically, pardon my French, but, get rid of these knuckleheads, and why are we wasting time and money? I know what the consumer wants and needs. We're going with my gut. And almost every single time he was right, because he went with his gut, his heart, and then made changes to that very, very slowly, almost stubbornly, right? I mean, Henry Ford, they talk a lot about Henry Ford in this book. He was like that. I mean, he had this gut that, yeah, we were going to be able to essentially assembly line and manufacture these cars. And then at some point, he's like, oh, we're going to have an 8-cylinder engine. And they thought he was crazy. And they're like, it can't be done. It's never been done. It'll never be done. Like, isn't that funny? And he's like, no, it will be done. And you guys are going to sit here and work on it. And you're going to have no other job until you figure it out. And it will happen. And he thought about it and prayed on it every single day. And obviously now we know there is the ability to make an 8-cylinder engine, which he did. But all that I think is just so fascinating when you can back all of this by faith, make decisions quickly with your gut when you know that. And it's tough to explain what that gut is, but when you just know that that's the right thing, what people tend to do, and this is not what you want to do, is overthink it and start analyzing it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do pros and cons and analyze some stuff, but when you have that gut feeling that, hey, this is right, you need to just go with it and then make changes slowly, right? So it's, a lot of people do the opposite, which would be procrastination. So they say that's one of the absolute biggest killers of success. Money, fame, success, getting things done is procrastination, right? So anything that you're trying to achieve, procrastination is one of the top killers, if not the top killer. So take action, make it happen. Do not think about it over and over and over again. Let me go find these 6 fears. So at the very end of the book, so the whole book, it gets you pumped up. It's got you thinking about your goals. You're writing down your goals. You now know that you need to have this burning desire about your idea, back it by faith and persistence, to never procrastinate, to make decisions quickly based on your gut and change them very, very slowly. And then it talks about the 6 ghosts of fear. Dun, dun, dun. So essentially it's giving you a warning at the very end of the book that there are 6 things that usually get in the way. And by the way, I meant to say indecision was another one earlier. So it's getting to a decision quickly. Indecision means and procrastinate, and then I'll pick this, and then you change it again the next day, and then the next day, and the next day, and you never get anything done, and you leave more confused, and probably anyone following you is more confused as well. So you do not want to ever be associated with persistence or the indecision. All right. So here are the 6 basic fears that Napoleon Hill, if you don't know the whole story, and I apologize for saying this the 20 minutes in here, but he went and studied and talked to all of the most successful people in America at the time, from Andrew Carnegie and Henry Ford. I mean, literally spent time with these people, to others, to musicians and artists, people who had success, and in every case they'd had lots of failure, and they just kept trying over and over again. They had this essentially just unwavering desire to keep going and never give up when they had a big dream. And so he wrote this book, Think and Grow Rich, based on all of the traits that he saw with the most successful people. Once again, not just about money, but just people who had pursued their dream and made really cool things happen that seemed almost impossible at the time. And he also found the people that didn't shared one of these 6, if not all 6, of these common fears that were holding them back in some way. And these are different than the ones I mentioned earlier about, procrastination, et cetera, or even the fear of failure. These are like more subconscious things that if you can't get past these, you're going to have a tough time growing. And the good news is, I think a lot of us are past some of these. So let me start off with the 6 basic fears. So the first one is the fear of poverty. So if you have no money or maybe negative money, and I've been there before, and it's not fun, it is really tough to think about growing when all you're doing is thinking about surviving. And, Napoleon Hill's kind of, I guess, rebuttal to that is, there's always someone poorer than you. And if you have a house over your head, even if you're behind on rent, but if you're literally living in a house, you're doing better than, I don't remember what part of the world population, but it was a lot. I mean, there is a crazy amount. I'm not talking about just homeless people. I mean, people in other countries that don't even have homes. They're living in huts. But if you have a true home, a real shelter, especially if there's like any sort of air conditioning, whether it's central air or just a little box fan with electricity, you are doing better than most people. But anyhow, that is a tough one. And I agree. It's really, really tough to think big. It's tough to even dream real big if you're constantly have this fear of poverty. Good news, I'm guessing a lot of you listen to this, that's not your number one suffer of or number one fear. The next one is the fear of criticism. We talked about that. That holds so many people back. There are so many of my friends who I've seen that wanted to pursue something, and they had a family member or even a spouse in some cases that just kind of poo-pooed on the idea and really shut the whole thing down. And in many cases, it was a great idea and they should have pursued it. And yeah, the worst case, it might have failed. But as I said earlier, they would have learned so much about themselves. They would have been more employable, ironically, even going back to their old job. So that fear of criticism, like, what are people going to say about me? And when you put yourself out there, even like we did with Salt Strong, you're going to get criticism. You're going to get haters. Think of everyone doing YouTube, or heck, anything for this matter these days. You could be Mother Teresa and someone's going to make fun of you and talk smack about you on social media. You can't let that get in the way of what you're trying to do. And so that it's easier said than done. It used to bother the heck out of me. I used to read all the negative comments and some would keep me up at night. Now I don't even care. We just kind of laugh about them. And I quite honestly just don't even read them anymore, because I realize that's someone's dealing with their own problems. And it's not me. They don't even know me. They don't know who I am. Some random person trying to criticize us. And I just don't care. It doesn't impact my dreams, my goals. That's all on them. So think about it that way. The next one, the fear of ill health. And this is why it's important to take care of our bodies. Um, and obviously, there's some things that just happen. All right, it's not like any of us wake up one day, even as kids. There's kids that get cancer every single day, and there's some things that are maybe just unavoidable, but there are some things that you can avoid by eating better, not drinking so much, getting good sleep, having a good, a better diet. It really is tough to dream big, to get excited, to have a burning desire if you're constantly just thinking about some ailment that you have with your body, or even someone close to you is dealing with something. That part is tough, but once again, it also is a lot of it is a mindset thing. I mean, that the book talks about when you have that burning desire for something, it can be even more powerful than the pain that you're feeling throughout the day. The fear of loss of love of someone. So this fear, and kind of goes back to that, criticism that someone's not going to love you that you really care for because you make this decision, or that this is going to disrupt some relationship that you have. The next one's the fear of old age, and the book says we're all going to experience it, embrace it, meaning so many people think, oh, I can't do this because I'm 70 or 60 or 40, whatever, right? I've heard people say, oh, I'm 38 years old. I got all my health insurance and 401k. There's no way I could take a risk and do that. Like, dude, you're 38, right? If you're listening to me right now and you're 60 or 70 or 80, you're going to laugh at him, right? Like, oh man, I wish I would have taken more chances when I was in my 30s. What a joke, right? I'm 45 or 46. And I think I don't think you're ever too young. I mean, too old or young. But I mean, think about all the stories from, if you've watched that movie about Ray Kroc, and there's so many super talented actors who didn't get found, quote unquote, until they were in their 50s and 60s. There's been people who have started successful businesses, their 60s and 70s. In 80s, I mean, you're never too old or too young. Don't let that be anything that holds you back from any sort of dream. And the last one is the fear of death, which ties into that. There are a lot of people, to me, it's not something I fear. If anything, it just charges me up. I remember reading something about Walt Disney, and Walt Disney, he didn't have a fear of death per se, but he used death to really propel him to make things happen. So almost like why people have that death clock where, it counts down how many days and hours and minutes you have left. Kind of creepy, but same point, they're using it to their advantage to say, you know what, this is a reminder not to sit on my bum. You're right. Not to procrastinate, to make things happen, to take some sort of massive action every single day. Right. And if we all did that, if we all just said, all right, we're going to take some sort of massive action that ties in with our dream, our desire, whatever it is, whatever we're trying to do in life, we take some sort of massive action every single day. Think what it would look like after a year. That's 365 days of pushing this big boulder, right? That's 365 days of just chipping away, taking some massive action on something. And that's how I look at it. That's one of my goals every day, is just take some sort of massive action. It's why I don't sit on the couch very often. It's why I've never watched Netflix. I'm not saying anything wrong if you do. To me, I don't get as much joy from that as I do from doing other things with my family, or even reading a book. For me, it's just something I get so much joy out of. Not everyone's wired the same way. Don't think you're crazy if you love watching Netflix, because obviously the majority of the country does. And even a lot of my close friends who are highly successful, it's their way of unwinding. I'm just different, and I'm finding, for me personally, that reading and doing other things outside of honestly, if the sun is out, I am usually outside, and if I have the opportunity not to be in front of a TV, I take it. It's just how we're wired. Anyhow, I don't want to. That's a whole another topic for a different day. But I hope this is helpful. If you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, I believe you can even listen to it for free on Audible, and some of the other Spotify's, et cetera. And the reason is because it was written so long ago now that it's out of whatever the circulation where it's protected by copyright. So now anyone can just basically rip it off and put it up there as an audio file. So I even got a free one, or not a free one, I think it was a couple dollars, that someone was on Amazon where they had basically just ripped it off and essentially giving it away. I don't think they even made any money on it, but Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, he had a few of the books as well. And that's why Napoleon Hill was famous. And this is another idea for you if you are young and looking for something to kind of do. Napoleon Hill is now recognized as one of like the experts on what successful people did, right? Think and Grow Rich was just one of his books. It was the top selling one. But Napoleon Hill never really did anything, right? Meaning he never ran a company. All he did, he took like 20 years of just studying all the most successful people, trying to be around them, interviewing them. And so it's essentially, he became like an interview, same like Oprah Winfrey, right? Oprah is a billionaire. She hasn't really done anything, right? And this is not a knock on Oprah, but Oprah hasn't done anything. She's just become a really good interviewer, right? She's found a way to bring out the best or get stories out of people in a way that other people can't. And people now associate Oprah with being like an expert in a lot of this stuff, even though she's never really done any of it, right? She's just an interviewer. Napoleon Hill is the same way. He never ran a business. He never became a billionaire or even a millionaire. He did over time because of his books, but he never really did anything except interview other people and curate it. And so just throwing that idea out there for some of you that might be looking for that next thing, that is always an opportunity if you enjoy doing that stuff. Meaning if you love investigating, if you love talking to people, to interviewing, there are people that do that, right? That all they do is curate books or do movie reviews, right? The top movie review, I don't even know what they are anymore, but there's all these movie reviewers who make good money and they don't actually make the movies, right? All they do is watch them and talk about them and curate them and talk about the pros and cons. So know that that is also an opportunity out there for those that like that. Anyhow, if you like this one, let me know. Joe@saltstrong.com. This is definitely a little bit of a different one, but I just finished Think and Grow Rich. And I wanted to share some of the kind of the key takeaways in my review and why I just love reading it so much. I really do believe that, everything starts with an idea. You back it by some desire and some faith and that persistence. It is amazing what can happen in your life if you just do that. But as I've said, a lot of times, I don't remember what episode this is, 300 or whatever. I've said on probably half of them, is when you have that idea or that goal, that desire, whatever it is, write it down. There's something magical that happens when you actually write it down, put it in writing. So love you guys. I hope this was helpful. Hope it hit the right people. It's always what I pray about every time. And I'd love to hear from you, Joe@saltstrong.com. Otherwise, I'll talk to you on the next episode.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.